I know self-publishing's not for everyone. Nothing is. But if you've considered self-publishing for even a minute, listen up, because I'm betting I know what's holding you back from exploring it further or getting started. Number one, you think the self-publishing process is a lot harder than it actually is. And number two, you're understandably afraid of doing it, air quote, wrong. So I've created a new free resource for you. It's called the Self-Publishing Starter Kit, and you can get instant access to it by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101. In this free training, you'll discover the exact 4 steps to focus on and mistakes to avoid so you can publish an incredible book that's indistinguishable in quality from a New York Times bestseller without overthinking, overguessing, or overspending in areas that won't make a difference. Again, visit publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101 to get instant access. Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 6-time author and book editor, and I help people write and publish powerful, thought-provoking, wildly entertaining books without any more overthinking, second-guessing, or overwhelm than absolutely necessary. Because let's face it, some overthinking, second-guessing, and overwhelm is going to come with the territory if you're anything like me. I believe that story and shared perspective are 2 of the most potent ways we connect with one another, and that your story, perspective, and insights are destined to become someone else's favorite resource or pastime. For more book writing and publishing tips and solutions, and plenty of free and low-cost resources, visit publishaprofitablebook.com. And for recommendations of fabulous books you've possibly never heard of, book writing inspiration, and the occasional meme so relatable you'll wonder if it was created with you in mind, follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth Lyons Author. Hi, everyone. I am so excited today to get to introduce you to Julie Chavez, who is the author of Everyone But Myself, which came out at the beginning of January 2024 with Zibby Books and was recently named a USA Today Bestselling memoir. And let me tell you, if there were an award, and there should be, for the best, most relatable book cover for parents, this book would win it hands down. If you haven't seen the cover, I highly encourage you to go look it up right now, as long as you're not driving down the road, because I mean, the illustration is just magnificent, and it just so well expresses and encapsulates what the vast majority of us as parents, especially moms, are feeling on the daily. Julie is an elementary school librarian. Now I want to go do that. How fun is that? In Northern California. Her writing has been featured in Real Simple, The New York Post, and Zibby Mag. And she lives with her husband and 2 tall teenagers in a house where she arranges her books by color, further cementing the fact that we are supposed to be friends. You know, I'm all about keeping it real, celebrating the things that should be celebrated and also keeping it real. And Julie absolutely does that. I know you're going to love every second of this episode. I have linked all of the resources mentioned, all of the shout outs, all of the everythings, including the TikTok video. I finally found it, of the girl with her 10th copy of the book sold, in the show notes. But without further ado, let's get to the conversation. This book is so vulnerable. Would you agree?
I would call it yes, for sure. Yes.
It's not a comedy.
No.
I mean, there are comedic elements, I'm sure. I'm still waiting for mine to arrive, but that's fine, because I actually am kind of glad I haven't read it quite yet, because I want to ask some questions without having had that insight. My question, though, is it's being very well received.
Oh, I'm so
very
glad.
well received, which I'm sure you know. There was surely a moment when you thought about writing it that maybe well, I shouldn't say there was surely a moment. Was there a moment when you thought about writing it where you thought, should I do this?
That's such a good question. Here's the thing. I think I was so innocent and I wasn't looking all the way to the end, if that makes sense. And so there's this element of, well, two pieces to that answer. I mean, I think the first is that was such a desperate, sad time for me. And I would have done anything to feel better. And so this idea that there was some redemption in writing about it, and the idea that I could perhaps use that for good for someone else, that, stories connect us. So I think there was always that hope that would be worth it. And then the other piece of me was really I just wasn't thinking all the way to like, oh yes, so my neighbors will be reading this. I mean, it just didn't fully land. So I think it's a mixture of, my naive beginnings, which is totally healthy and good. And I think there's a real propulsion there that's wonderful. And then also my deep belief that this was not just a story for me.
Yeah, I think that being naive about this industry specifically, but possibly any industry, is one of the greatest gifts we can have. Because it's like, if you knew, would you? And of course, that's the most rhetorical hypothetical. I mean, who knows, right? But
yep.
It's...
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think I completely agree, though, because I think like anything worthwhile, it's hard. I mean, it's just not easy. And so I think naturally, of course, none of us really sign up and think, wow, that's going to be emotional and challenging and really kind of take me to the brink. Let's go. I mean, some of us do, but like, we don't necessarily, it's not easy to get ourselves to that place sometimes. And I'm sure it's true of anyone who's doing kind of a larger endeavor that's going to take a long time also, because I think there's the time element to it that, sometimes when you're naive about something, it's quick. And so you don't really have time to question your decision. But with writing and with publishing, you have plenty of time to question everything that you've done. So
correct.
I think that idea that there is a gift about not knowing maybe how hard something's going to be, but also not believing that you can't do it because that's the case. Because I think there is a confidence piece that's really hard, especially at the beginning, that you're not going to get over that hump. So you have to do it before you feel it. And so part of that not knowing really assists in that, like, just go.
Like you have to do it while not knowing.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
I wonder what you think about this. So we talk about like, we don't know how hard it's going to be when we start writing a book. So there are certain things that people do because they're insane, like triathlons or Mount Everest, or I don't know, something like that, like hiking rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. They know, unless they're wildly arrogant, they know going into it, like, this is going to suck.
Right.
Right. I wonder why we have this thing in writing, because, and I wonder if part of it is because when you're talking about like hiking from the north to the south rim, everyone is like, even the coaches are like, it's going to suck.
Yes.
But in writing, there's this small segment. I hope it gets smaller and smaller, where they're like, it's easy, just do it. You can write it in a weekend and make $18 billion and it's going to be great. So I don't know if that's part of it or if it's just, again, naive. How hard can it be? Put my butt in the seat and write a book. How hard?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the answer is probably in a few factors, because one of them is that really when we hear authors talking, we're mostly hearing them talk when they're doing book publicity. And so they are smoothing the story for you. And some of that is intentional, and some of it is just, hey, we don't have time to go into all the nitty gritty and no one cares. So this idea of, hey, I'm giving you the quick version of everything. So I think we start to absorb that quick version and put it as normal in our minds. And so, okay, that's how they did it, as opposed to the ups and downs. And I think there's that. And then I think there's also sort of the opaque, mysterious side of book publishing where, you don't know until you're in it. And that's true with any job or anything. You don't know the specific hell of working at Starbucks And I'm sure Starbucks is a great place to work in some ways. But
Yeah.
every job has its own very specific hell. And it's like, you don't know it until you're in it. And so that I think is this same idea. But I think
Every job has its own very specific hell.
it's the specificity that will really bite you. Yeah.
No, it really is true. And I think, when you're out and you're doing publicity too, you're speaking to readers. You're not necessarily, you're peripherally speaking to other authors, but the people who want to hear, or maybe they don't want to, but they need to hear about the ins and outs of actually writing a book. Those aren't the readers. Those are the other authors, like fellow authors and aspiring authors who, that's what the whole point of this podcast is like, help us see sort of behind the curtain of, so that when the people listening can stop feeling like there's something wrong with them because they watched someone on the Today Show and in 3 minutes made it look like I had an idea, I wrote it, I got an agent, I got a publisher, I launched, and now I'm living in this castle over here.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I was just going to say that your podcast does fill that need. I was just listening to yours with, and I'm blanking on her first name, McGinnis is her last name.
Oh, Kristen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kristen. That was a fascinating episode and so valuable. And I knew zero of that when I started. So the idea that podcasts like yours are existing, and you're exactly right. It's writers talking to other writers. And if you come at it, depending on which road you arrive at book publishing, you are colored by the environment you've been in. So I've always been a reader, and that is how I got here. And so that left me like, readers are, authors are the coolest people, and this is amazing. And I was just doe-eyed and starry-eyed and so happy. And then, you get into it. So you're exactly right that it depends on kind of what you're looking at, which is so great because that is happening less. And I think we're having more opportunities to talk about that, but it's still very tricky. And then as soon as you think you get over the hump, you're in the comparison game or trying to figure out, like, there are no good metrics for how you're doing because everything is so individual. No. And because of that, you find yourself, I think, easily frustrated when you maybe didn't realize it,
Well, and people ask questions, I think, once you're published that are very normal and logical questions, but they easily frustrate authors. For example, how is the book selling? Or how many copies have you sold? Right. And as an author, I don't even know. I am my own entity over here. Like, I do my own distribution and everything. And I can't, because it's not my focus. Maybe it should be, maybe I should know the data. But between this, that, and the other thing, we don't know. When you're with a traditional house, there's a period of time after launch when there are returns coming back and books shipping from everywhere. And who the hell knows? And plus, I saw the cutest TikTok. Okay, I'm trying not to be on TikTok, but the book area is starting to bring me in. I saw the cutest TikTok yesterday, and it was this girl, new author, and she had just sold her 10th book. 10, number 10. Okay.
Number 10.
She was number 10. No, not 10th book written, 10th copy of her first book.
Okay. Got it.
No, that's very important. Words matter.
Okay.
Words matter. Okay.
Well, no, I'm with you now. Now we're tracking. So she sold her 10th one.
10th copy of her first book.
Okay.
She was ecstatic. She was like, my goal was to sell 10 copies in a month. Oh. And I've sold 10 copies this week. And that means that my book is in the hands of 10 people. And it made my heart explode, Julie, because I thought we're always racing to like, well, I've sold 67,000 books. Well, I've sold 124,000 books. Well, I've sold, and it minimizes the whole, to go full, not full circle, but to come back to where you started. If you can get your book into the hands of one person who is also having their first panic attack in their were you in your 30s?
Yeah, late 30s.
Yeah. And a mother, and like, what in the hell is going on? You've just, what a gift, right? So can we start celebrating? I just sold my 8th copy or my first copy.
I couldn't agree more. And it's so funny. It's totally serendipitous that we're talking today because I just kept bugging the publisher and was like, hey, I'm just curious about numbers. Like, I can handle it, no problem. And they sent it to me and I thought, what? Like, that feels like not very many, right? But this is the game of it where you go from, I just want to help one person to, I want to sell 100,000 copies. Like we cannot live like that. And it's not healthy. And I think when you were saying, maybe I should be more engaged, I don't think you should, because
No, I don't either.
It takes us out of that. Well, good. I'm glad we agree. We're aligned. But it takes us out of the goal, out of the beauty of the work. I mean, that's the machine. That's the machine. And that's the part we can't control. And so
Right.
I think that has been such a good lesson for me. And, as I got closer to publication, I started writing a new project. And a lot of it was because I am going to lose my mind if this is my focus. I will just go down the rabbit hole. And I don't want to do that, because
I don't want to. Right.
I want to focus on, someone sending me a message and saying, I connected with your book. I learned something with your book. I mean, it truly is miraculous. So you telling that story about the 10th book, like, that gives me goosebumps, because that is someone who has got their head on straight about it. And if we can keep coming back to that, then that's life-giving.
It really is, because also numbers are so meaningless,
Yes.
right? If you think a number sounds big until you hear a bigger number. So if
Correct.
you hear, oh, I sold 400 books in a week, and you think, oh God, that's not. Can you imagine if you were sitting at a table in a bookstore and there was a line of 400 people waiting to buy your book? You would be like, this is the dream. If I have 3 people waiting in line, I'm ecstatic, because I've been in a situation before where I had 0 people standing.
Where you just have to like awkwardly make eye contact, but try not to do it too much, because you're like, I don't want to pressure you, but if you want this book.
Yeah, but also this is pretty good. I know you're a man and this is clearly written for a new mom, but I mean, whatever.
You might like it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so what gave you the initial idea did someone else say, have you thought about writing a book? Because, I mean, how far out were you from the whole experience where you felt like you had, and I use this word a lot and I don't love it, but healed enough, to write from a place of powerful vulnerability, as I like to say, and really, but not cause yourself to think, well, have I grown enough?
Yes.
To be able to write about it yet?
Yeah. So I had started writing a blog in 2012, and over the years, mostly it was like my mom and my friends and my sister, and some people would occasionally say, you're a great writer. I was still using a double space, so I was really a noob. Like, it was only very recently in the timeline of my life that
so
my
now
brother
we know how old
that.
you are in general, because those of us who learned on the typewriter, that's where.
Yeah. And you kind of had to pry it from my dead hands too. Cause I was like, my brother-in-law sent me this article like, hey, you really need to stop this. And I was like, I double space after the period. That's what we do. This is how I learned it. So that was, but no, I am reformed now, and I can see it instantly when I look back at my old writing. Oh, how cute I was. So I'm writing these blog posts, and people would occasionally say, you should write a book. Now, because I came at that from that reader side, like I was mentioning earlier, in my mind, I was like, I could never write a book. I mean, it felt too big. It felt too important, to be honest. And I did say to people at certain points, I would love to write a book. I just don't know what the story would be. And so one of the people that said that to me was my principal at the school. And so I'm in elementary.
I can't love more that you're a librarian. I mean, is that the greatest job ever? Continue.
It is. They're wonderful parts. And of course, like we talked about, specific hellish parts. Yeah. But it is so fun. And they've been so invested in my journey. And that has been, it multiplies the joy, and that's really special. So I think, so she had said to me, you should write a book. I said, well, I don't know what the story would be. And then this happened in the spring of 2018. During that time, she was one of the early people I spoke to about what was happening, sort of accidentally, because I was worried that I needed to quit my job. And that had to do with me finding help and bad advice from a doctor. And so it's all these sort of pieces that led up to it. But then the following year in 2019, I said to her, thank you for helping me keep this job. I needed to know that this was something that could happen, because she called it the working mom meltdown. And my therapist later called it a mid-mom crisis, which is also very accurate. So
I love that.
I was in this very tricky middle place. And I just said, thank you for being there for me and being a friend to me. And I said, I think this is a story that happens to a lot of women, not just me. And she said, well, that's what you should write your book about. And it literally was, I started that summer. So that was at the end of that school year, started that summer, wrote 30,000 words, thought that that was somehow a book, went to a Path to Publishing class, got a name of a woman who was a coach and also headed up a hybrid publisher. And so that's kind of the way that I got into that piece. And I sent her this 30,000 words and talk about being cute. I was like, here's my book. And she said, well, this isn't a book, but I think it's source material. And I think you've done some things sort of on accident that will work. So she really gave me, Brooke Warner is her name, and she's wonderful. And she really gave me that base of, you need to learn about the craft of this. And having read books is not quite enough to get you there. And so that was, helpful. And I am very coachable. I love to learn. And then suddenly it was 2020 and I had a little extra time on my hands. So I polished the book that time. But yeah, that's how I got to that place. And I think for me, luckily, I felt solid enough in where I was. And in some ways it was, again, that redemptive piece of it where it's like, hey, I'm going to write this because it's a story that might be helpful to someone else. And the more I talked about it with people and said, this is what I went through, it was always, oh, me too. Or, oh, my sister-in-law struggles with that, or whatever. I mean, everybody has a point of connection to people in this story. And even some of our friends who are husbands are reading it and saying, this is helping me understand my wife better. And this is helping put words to things. So I think there was that knowledge of, I can take that time and push it forward. So that was a good thing.
Well, and that's such a peripheral benefit that I don't think we even think about, is that there are loved ones of someone who is going through something, who are wondering, what should I say? What should I not say? What are the best ways to be a friend to this person, a life partner to this person? And so by reading a book such as yours, they can get some of those, and they can get some suggestions.
Yeah.
Some places to start.
Yes. And hopefully this idea that you reading about, the particulars of the argument I had with my husband on, that one Sunday, that's actually helpful sometimes, because you can see this is the human part of me. It's the human part of my life and our marriage and all of these pieces. And we all have that. So to have it hopefully laid out, and if it can put language to it, like Mr. Rogers, I say this all the time, what's mentionable is manageable. So if we can put words to things, we're already partially there.
Correct. Okay. So I think it was it The Shit No One Tells You About Writing? Was that the podcast you were on?
Yes.
Okay. So I talk about that podcast all the time.
Oh my gosh. It's so good. Yes. Same.
They're so great. So I'll link that episode so that people can go. And I almost don't even want to ask you to repeat it because you've already said it on there, but it's so interesting, the story, how you came to the publishing. It was like this backward. I mean, I remember exactly where I was on the highway when I was listening to this, because I was like, this is nuts. So can you just regurgitate it? Because it's crazy.
Yes.
In a cool way.
I'll give the short version. So we're already partially there. So I'm starting to work with Brooke.
Yep.
I finished the manuscript. She tells me, I want you to shop this to some smaller publishers that take unagented submissions, but you're going to have a hard time. You don't have a platform. It's a memoir. So she was just very honest with me about that, but definitely wanted me to feel like I had done due diligence elsewhere. So I had submitted it to a few places, got some very nice rejections, and then thought, okay, I think She Writes Press, which is the hybrid. Yes. Yeah. I was like, okay, I think this is good. And I went to her and said, does this feel like it would fit your list? Because they do curate their list and they're trying to, have
like a solid curated. They don't just accept everything that comes across there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. They have a vision and this is what they want to do. And Brooke was so kind. She said, yeah, your book is the reason I started this press, because it's a great project, but you're going to have a hard time. And so I signed with them, hired a publicity person, and also called a publicist. Wow, words are hard. publicity human. There we go.
The only reason I can form words right now is because I took this new, I'm not a paid spokesperson, but the Lemmy, have you heard about the Lemmy line?
No.
It's like Kourtney Kardashian. Okay. I'm about to I'm about to lose half my listenership. It's Kourtney Kardashian's new line of supplements. It's called Lemmy, Lemme. So there's Lemmy Focus, Lemmy Sleep, Lemmy whatever. Well, my sister got me Lemmy Focus for my birthday this year, and I am popping those things. They're so delicious. I just can't.
I can't wait.
And I swear that without them, I would be calling them a publicityist person. So just so we're all on the same page.
This will be great. And then I'll say after this, let me take a break so I can order me some of those.
So
right?
Lemmy, right. Yes. And we are available to be paid spokespeople. Should they want people with words. Yeah. Who can't form very sentences, low fee. But it's fine. Okay. So you hired a publicist.
So yes. So I hired the publicist, and part of what I did was, and Caitlin Summy is her name, and she's lovely. And she was really helpful in terms of giving me a sense of the positioning of, here are the early steps. And I was so far out. I was over a year ahead out so they were going to publish it in 22. This was, I think spring of 21 I signed. So
and you were already working with Caitlin.
Correct. I had tons of lead time. So I was already just doing these laying the groundwork sort of things.
Yeah.
So part of that was I spoke to a social media advisor that Caitlin worked with, and she mentioned Zibby, and I had not heard of Zibby. So I joined her online book club and was like, I wonder what this is all about. Also, because I feel like Zoom has ushered in this opportunity to hear from authors that we've never had.
Yeah.
And so that's so exciting. I had never been to a book event. So I just went and, I lied. I went to one with Jojo Moyes, which was amazing, but it wasn't a conversation. So I joined the book club and I just slowly got to know Zibby. I wrote a couple pieces and they were excerpts from the book. And at the time she had this Medium publication. So they published these pieces. Those did well. She was starting her publishing house and she said, I'd like to see your manuscript. And it was right at the time where I had gotten kind of enough support from She Writes to know what I was looking at in terms of looking down both roads, what the pros and cons were for both.
Sure.
And that was the great thing about being with a hybrid during that time, is that Zibby Media, Zibby Books, they give me a ton of support, and I take none of it for granted because I was prepared to do it all on my own. Absolutely. So this idea that I can sort of I understand the money value of what I'm getting, if that makes sense. So I was able to shift over, and they were providing publicity. So at that time, Caitlin and I, we settled up for what I owed her, kind of thing. Yeah. And they gave me this wonderful start. And so then I was with Zibby Books, and then I got an agent about a year later, because by that time I understood what an agent did. But I mean, I didn't know the role an agent could and did play. I think that's the other thing, is that once you're in kind of the machine, everybody has their thoughts and interest, and there are so many voices, and that can be really hard as the author to know what to do. And so I needed someone that was just there to support me, educate me, to really fill that role. And especially
it's not just to get you a book deal.
No, it is not.
And that's, I think, when people hear about getting an agent in reverse, they're confused because they think, well, why do you need an agent? You already have a deal, but you need someone to be your advocate. And it's not even because, when you talk about a group like Zibby Books, they're your partners. So you don't need an advocate from the standpoint of checks and balances. You just need someone who you can sort of lean on and say, hey, what does this mean? So that you don't have to bother the people at Zibby Books, who are out trying to do the promotion. Right. And so that is a role that agents play that I think is wildly not misunderstood. It's unknown.
I agree completely, because I thought that the agent brokered the deal and then they were out, and then you called them next time you had your other one.
Right.
So I think the relationship I have with my agent is so helpful for me, and especially the way I'm tuned, because I don't want to do things the wrong way, and I don't want to make anyone's life hard. And I think as an author, that's part of, I understood that as part of my responsibility, right? I show up, I do the publicity. This is part of what I owe in this situation. It's not just here's the book, you do everything. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, because I really feel like from the publisher's standpoint, whether you're, hybrid notwithstanding, but if you're with a traditional press, whether they're a big five or a boutique,
yes,
they are expecting you to do some portion, if not a large portion. It varies, right?
Sure.
But of your publicity. And I think that authors sometimes mistakenly think that if they go with a traditional house, one of the things they're getting from that is a massive amount of publicity and marketing support. And
yes,
it really is kind of a, how do we make this work? So I love the way you said that, like, this is your contribution. And I think a lot of authors mistakenly think, well, my contribution was the book.
100%. And that's not quite, but that's the thing, again, like we were talking about, the things you don't know at the beginning, that's one of them. And then understanding that, yes, publicists are pitching, but you got to write the pieces. You have to do the interviews. You've got to make the video that may or may not results in an interview for you, because that's the other piece of this game, is that the rejection doesn't stop. You just get a pause while you edit, and then you get to go back on the train of like, well, no, that didn't work out. And that's okay. But I think that's why, whether it's the numbers or publicity hits or whatever, keeping your eye on your track is so important. And I think a good agent can help you do that. They can help pull you back down and support you and say, here's where you step next.
So what do you think this is a hard question, probably maybe to answer, because you do have an agent, but say you had stayed with the She Writes Press route, who would you have? It's equally important, I think. And I think there's a misconception that if you're an indie author, which is what I consider you to be if you're with a hybrid or if you're self-publishing, that you can't have that kind of a team. I don't think that's true. I think you just have to create that team. So do you have a sense of where you would have found that support? Or
I do. I think that obviously Caitlin and some of the other publicists who work regularly with She Writes Press, I think similar to your model, right? Where we have kind of this stable and you can work with them and they understand how we do things, which is hugely helpful. So I think that would have been a huge source of support. The She Writes team is very available, but also something that they do and that Zibby Books has done as well is promote communication between their authors. And that is a huge gift to be able to not only have the advice and weighing in, but it takes you out of yourself enough to realize that we're all trying together. We're all, helping each other along. Yeah. This is hard for everyone. Yes. And I think it demystifies some of that. Like, I understand now, and I knew this to be true, but it is so hard to sell books. Even with all the support. I mean, it is such a challenge to move the needle in a meaningful way. And so to have people alongside you who are trying different things and you're paying attention, but then also that camaraderie to bring you back to, this is what we get for it in terms of I think that's been the most valuable thing for me through the whole process is the connections I've made, the people I've become friends with. I mean, that is the gift because the rest is part of the machine, part of the business side. Whereas these relationships are wonderful and life-giving and I love it. I mean, truly, I told Mondo, my husband, I was like, I got to work on this other book because I don't want to be kicked out of the club. Like I know I'm going to get an embroidered jacket. I am in. And they will not get me out of here. Thing. Yes, exactly. I want to be. And so I think that part of it is that's the beautiful part. And you can find that many places, like a place like She Writes where they have a really supportive sisterhood. There are so many good small presses that give you that. And that's even an advantage, I think, to some of those boutique or hybrid experiences where you have that. Whereas, maybe Simon & Schuster isn't as much not quite as much. Let's set up a happy hour.
Right. In New York City.
I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. Right.
No, I don't. I mean, it's also very different. It depends seemingly on the day of the week and the month of the year and
correct
where the planets are and all of that. But so I'm curious how do you define or look toward goals and success, right? How do you set that up in terms of what feels so that you're not constantly holding yourself to a certain number, whether it's a number of books sold or dollars made, or this is a weird industry in that way, because it almost feels sometimes like you have to, it almost feels like playing, well, it is. It's like playing the lottery.
Oh, sure.
Because it's not in that it's easy to buy a lottery ticket, but it is in that you're kind of risking so much on really just no idea if it's going to go and when or how and to what degree and all of that. And even after book one, it's like, am I going to get book two? Am I going to get, so how do you navigate that?
Well, it's funny. Early on, one of my just favorite authors is Kelly Corrigan. And she told the story of how The Middle Place came out in hardback, didn't do very well. And it wasn't until she wrote an article right before the paperback release about her mom. I think it was the mom and her friends. I can't remember. They had a name, like the Pigeons. I'm going to have to look it up. I'll find it out. We can link it. Sorry, I'm not being specific.
It's Pigeons now to me.
Okay. Yes. Now I've ruined that for everyone. Sorry, Kelly Corrigan. I really do love your stuff. So
but we're the Pigeons now.
Yes. So she writes this piece and then the paperback takes off. So I think probably the best way to answer your question is the way I set goals is thinking about what's filling me up, right? The goals have to be in my control and they have to be something that is life-giving. So for me, Joanna Rakoff gave this advice once on a podcast where she talked about not setting down a certain number of words per day. It was, okay, I'm going to nail this scene. I'm going to work on this. Like just having so for me, I'm trying to be in touch with the manuscript or with the project in some form every day. Like literally I wrote half of what I was thinking I would write yesterday and I was falling asleep. So I took a nap and then told my child to find a ride home because I had to take a nap. So, we have to make it fit our real lives. So I think when I set goals, I try for flexibility and joy because I'm not here to crush my own life. And then for success, I am always trying to think about the long game. Because if I'm lucky, this book will have a long life. If I'm lucky, I will have a long life. If I'm lucky, I can write more books and this can be a part of my story and my career. All of that is far out. And there's something about defining success later that really takes pressure off of right this second. So it gives me a lot of freedom to look at the goals as things that make my days have shape and purpose and some happiness without tying that to, and the result needs to be X and it needs to happen soon.
On this day.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So just this idea of playing the long game and also looking for connection because that's who I am at my core. I love people. It's why I work in the library. I love books, but mostly I want the kids to come into the library and I don't care if they ever read a page. I care that they come in and that they feel loved and comfortable among the books. Like that is my goal for them. So
have you seen
feel that?
It's not a meme. I think it's a reel and it's a little girl and she's in a stroller and her mom pushes her into the library and she says, "I'm back" to all the books.
Oh my gosh. That's adorable.
Like 3 or 4. But it's so really sweet. Right. Like to just feel it. I'm terrified that one day books might become not in print form. I can't imagine a world. Right. I can't.
Well,
so what are you working on?
Oh, sorry.
Well, right. No.
Yeah,
say what did you say before that?
Oh, that's what we're laboring for. Like whether we're authors or librarians or whoever, we believe that. So there's that kind of core belief that drives it where it's, I believe books matter. I believe words matter. I believe all these things make a difference. And so that's why I'm setting these goals, but that's why I'm making sure that success is only like a small part of what might happen, know?
Yeah.
So, to answer, what am I working on now?
Yeah.
Is that what you were curious about? So I'm working on a novel and I'm about halfway through the draft. This shows how dopey I am in the best possible way. But I was literally like, you know what? I'll be able to put some words down while I'm on the plane during my book tour. No, I was only able to drool and watch the Great British Baking Show. That was all I could do on the plane rides. I was so tired.
Fair.
And so,
Fair.
here I am like thinking, and that's why my goals have to stay flexible because I'm not always realistic. So I think there's that side of it, but I'm working on a novel that's kind of in the magical realism, upmarket fiction area. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm slowly starting. It is really fun because I don't have to make it real. And some of the pieces I've written, we go back and forth, like how many ways can I explain panic versus anxiety versus, you know what I mean? I've been in the weeds with that kind of stuff. And now I'm like, she walked down the street. I mean, it is just beautiful. I'm like, and then she went to the store. Exactly.
Right.
She found the pigeons.
See, I find I was just talking to somebody else about this. I find that surprisingly overwhelming. So, I've written all nonfiction up until now. I'm working on my first novel. And I thought, how hard can this be? Like, I get to make up basically the whole thing. I do believe that we pull a lot of fiction from either from our own lives or experiences, places we've been, whatever.
Totally.
But I still get to make stuff up. And if a storyline doesn't go the way, I get to change it. How hard? Well, apparently when the options are limitless, yeah.
It is overwhelming in that way. I agree with you. And I will say, this is the part where I'm not thinking. So I don't feel overwhelmed right now because I'm just writing. I'm not really thinking too much about the plot. And I'm reading Matt Bell's book. Somebody just told me to read Save the Cat. Like, I really don't.
Oh my gosh.
I've heard, so many things about that, but truly I come to this with not a lot of education. I was a Spanish major in college. So
oh my gosh, I was a Japanese major. So we're both, okay. I mean, it's like, what are we doing?
Exactly. Right. Why are we trying this? That is kind of the magic of it too, that you don't know what you shouldn't be doing. And I'm using air quotes there. And so then you're freed up. But yeah, there is an overwhelming sign. And I have no idea, or I have no doubt that when I go back for that first revision, I mean, there are notes in this document like, Julie, figure out what time this is. And what year? How old is this person? Like, I write myself notes and I highlight them and just keep moving. So,
well, and I think there are different levels to this. Like, I love Joanna Rakoff. And so when she was on the podcast and we were chatting, she was talking about she is a literary writer, right?
Correct.
I mean, come on. And so she was talking about these different what do you call them? Not retreats, but residencies, residences and artist in residence. And is it called bread loaf? I don't know. But she was talking about all these things like they're part of her everyday vernacular. Okay. Yeah. But I'm over here going, bread what? Like there's a what? So sometimes we put this pressure on ourselves to be able to write like that.
Yeah.
That's not, my God, I'm just trying to figure out, are they going to a coffee shop? Is it when they go to the coffee shop? Is it indie? Is it Starbucks? Is it Dutch Brothers? Like I will spend hours.
Yes.
Which should it be? And so I think it's lovely to talk to people also where they're also just having fun with it and they're reading, Save the Cat and enrolling in workshops and trying to figure out like, how do you string this stuff together that keeps people turning pages?
Yes. There's and I agree with you. It is fun to see that because like Joanna is the queen. We are like the peasants rolling around somewhere, right? And I don't mean that as shady. No. There is space for all of it. And that's the beautiful thing about books and reading is that there are so many avenues, so many people. Like I read The Fourth Wing. I didn't love it. And I am very, I was all good. I was like, okay. So, but again, people love that book. So it's that idea of, hey, if I just write like I'm meant to write, and if I believe that I'm the only me there is, so I can bring my particular voice to this. I mean, that's what I tell the kids. Like you are the only you with your thoughts and your gifts. And so part of your job is to bring that forward. So if this is what you're doing, then we're just growing into ourselves. And I think there's a simplicity to that. But we are so grateful to the Joanna Rakoffs who are so generous and give us a sense of what could be. And again, the direction we're going.
And you know what else? Like I'll speak for Joanna specifically is there's no elitism with Joanna. There's no sense of other. There's no, look, you're this kind of a writer, but without saying it, I'm this kind of, none of that.
She would never call me a peasant. I would call myself the peasant.
Exactly.
But as we know.
Yes. Exactly. Correct. And I think that is just I mean, it's one of the loveliest things about her, and there are so many lovely things about her. It's one of the loveliest. And I think it's one of the loveliest things about a certain segment of the book publishing industry. Because this
Yes.
is, I mean, let's be honest, this is a very competitive, cutthroat. You don't have to, do much Googling to find all the Goodreads nonsense that's going on. There
Oh,
is and you can choose to a degree at least who you're going to surround yourself with in the same way that you can choose what success looks like and what goals look like and all of that. And
yes.
I'm so grateful that there are so many people. I think that's the part of book writing that I've become addicted to is
Hmm.
the people side of it. The people I've met and get to talk to, whether they're readers or fellow authors or publishers or editors or agents or whomever.
Hmm.
It's like it's truly, it's like life-giving.
It is. It's
Like,
such a gracious community. And
yes.
so many people are willing to support you. When I was doing early days for Ask a Librarian, the podcast, I emailed Fiona Davis and she emailed me back. And I was telling my sister, I called her, I was like, Fiona Davis emailed me. Like, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
I still feel that way because
Yeah.
I think anyone who writes a book, publishes a book, it's a little miracle. It doesn't matter how you
I
get
know.
there. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It is a tiny miracle that it gets done. So this
For sure.
idea that there are all these wonderful people that especially if they're people we've looked up to, that are just willing to reach back and assist, and not even, but they don't characterize it in that way either. It's not like a reaching back. It's just you're part
It's
of the
just part
fold.
of it,
It's
right? It's
beautiful.
just
Yes.
I don't know what the word, it's not, I guess it probably is clicky because
Sure.
everything is, if you look, meaning every industry has its,
Yes.
but I feel like having been in several different industries, this is the least, and maybe it's just the way that I'm moving through it. I don't know.
Yeah.
There could be other people who say, no, 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 this is a really clicky space and it's all about who you know. But I have not found that to be true. So, same as you, I reach out to people and I say, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? And I think there's no way they're going to respond.
Yep.
And boom,
Yeah.
I'd love to come on.
Well, and I think
It's,
that's the other piece of this. And I think I talked about this on the shit no one tells you about writing, is that when you come into it with no expectation, because I think that's the other thing, is that if you are someone who's coming into this and you're new, you do want to know, hey, if this person gives me a blurb, wonderful. If they don't give me a blurb, wonderful. Like, you have to have that sort of understanding of your place in the ecosystem.
yeah,
I think there's that part of it that kind of, again, frees you up from expectation and becoming a horrible monster who's relentlessly self-promoting. So I
yeah.
think the idea that, and it sounds like, and I know this to be true of you, you're moving through the space in that way too, where it's not necessarily what is everyone going to give me, but what do I have to bring here and who will partner with me in that?
Yeah, I'm like, what do I have to receive for my
Yes.
own growth? Because it's not
Yes.
all about the book. And that's the thing about book writing that I swear we could say it over and over again, and most people won't believe it until they've done it, which is the gift of book writing is the book is but such a small part
Mm-hmm.
of, because you just don't even know the
No.
ways in which you're going to grow within yourself, the friends you're going to make, the ways that other people are going to touch your life, that you're going to touch. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I
It
think
is.
that's the
Yeah.
part that I wish people were less naive about, because I think
Yes.
that's something that would draw more people in to wanting to do it. It's like the people who are crazy enough to climb Mount Everest, for some reason, want to do it, even knowing that it's going to be hell.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is that thing? And I think this is a big part of it in the book industry that makes people want to step in, even once they know, well, this is kind of the hellish part.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think you're exactly right. It's the promise of transformation, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's what I say to the kids about books a lot of times, is because I read them year over year, and I will
Yeah.
say, this book is the same, but you are different. And
Like The
so,
Alchemist. Have you ever read The
yeah,
Alchemist? Yeah.
yes. So this kind of idea, though, that you are revisiting that, and that the book is a vehicle for you to become who you're meant to be,
Yeah.
is a beautiful idea. And then that it can be part of a reader's story. I mean, they're bigger ideas, and it's true that kind of keeps you keeps you in the game and keeps you from losing sight of the fact that this is an insane privilege that we're able to even have this conversation today. Like all the pieces that make that happen. That's what I mean. That's why I got to write that other book, because I just cannot be kicked out. I will not leave. I refuse.
You can sit at my table.
Perfect.
You can always sit at my table.
Perfect.
Okay, so you mentioned The Cat. What else are you reading now? I always try to end by remembering to ask, and it's a blessing and a curse, because whatever you tell me, I'm going to go buy if I don't already have it. So,
well, of course. And I will also, I'm always reading multiple things at once. So that is a problem for me. Okay, so I'm reading The Sicilian Inheritance by Joe Piazza.
Oh.
I have an advanced copy and I'm almost done with it. Do you want me to send it to you?
I would love that.
Perfect. Okay. I will do that because I should be done in the next couple of days and it's so good. So I'm reading that one. I just finished Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. She wrote Miracle Creek. Did you ever read Miracle Creek? See, this is what's amazing to me. These are very well-known books. Like
I know.
Good Morning America Pick. That's why everyone has to remember you cannot focus on the other pieces.
That's the thing. And this happens do you know how many times I say to somebody like Zibby Owens and they go, who? One time I said, Brene Brown, and someone was like, who? And I thought, forget it. I'm done. Everyone doesn't know somebody. But
absolutely.
Sometimes I feel like I should almost be. In fact, Zibby was on last week. Her episode will air tomorrow for blank.
Perfect.
And oh my God. I mean, come on. And so I said to her, do you ever feel like, do people ever say to you, have you heard of this book? And you have to say no. And she said, yeah. And I used to be so incredibly embarrassed. Like, I mean, I should know this. I should know this. And I'm thinking, me too. Given what I do, I should know this. But there are just so many books, which is such an incredible thing. Okay. So that one, what else?
There's one that's on my Kindle. I can't remember if it's out. I'm going to read Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm back on my game with reading, because that's a tricky thing. I think once you're in this space, it can become too much of a job. So I'm going to read Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame, and then Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. These are like my next three. Those two. And then there's also one called You'd Look Better as a Ghost. And I think she's a serial killer.
Okay, that one is ringing I feel like I might have seen that. Oh my God, I'm going to say it on TikTok. Yeah. Would I have seen that on?
I think you might have, because I think she's like, I think it's kind of like vigilante justice sort of vibe. Like, hey, did you cut me off in traffic? Well, you'd look better as a ghost. That's the vibe I'm getting so far. And I'm sort of a quietly sick person on the inside. Like I love dark comedy. So for me, that is right up my alley.
Right up your alley.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, this is great. This is okay. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you're like, this is probably nap day in between all the touring things, but I appreciate it so much. And I'll link everything in the episode notes. And
thank you. Thank you for having me. Truly, I've been listening to your podcast, just getting ready. And I was telling my husband today, this is the low time of day for me when I get off of school and things are a little like, please, someone put me to bed. It's 4:00 too early. But I said to him, you know what? I just know I'm going to have a great conversation with her. Mm-hmm. Like, you are such a kind, fun interviewer, and I love listening to your podcast. It will be in my regular rotation from now on. So I'm so happy we're connected.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.